The galaxy had seen countless wars. Civilizations rose and fell like waves upon a shore. Yet no one ever thought much about the small blue world at the edge of a quiet arm of the Milky Way. To the great empires, Earth was nothing more than a young species. Loud, reckless, and unimportant. They were not taken seriously. Not until the day everything changed. It began with whispers across the stars. A message carried on broken transmissions. A dying soldier, speaking through static. His voice weak, his breath shallow. He said only this: "We should never have touched them." The words echoed through military councils and alien courts. They carried a weight no one could ignore. Who were they? What had happened on that distant world? Why would a soldier, hardened by centuries of conquest, end his life with a warning? Across the Empire, commanders laughed at the story. They told themselves that humans were only fragile creatures of flesh and bone. They had no great fleets. No grand technology. They were new to the stars. They could not resist the might of those who ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. But under the surface of their pride, a seed of doubt had begun to grow. Then came the silence. Entire patrol fleets stopped reporting. Ships that entered human space never returned. At first, leaders claimed it was a simple mistake. A storm in the void. A fault in the engines. But soon the pattern grew too clear. An admiral sent 10 ships into the Sol system. None came back. He sent 20 more. Only one returned, broken and scarred. Its hull torn apart. Its crew burned and dying. Before their final breath, one of them whispered a phrase that froze every council chamber. "They fight like no one else." Fear began to spread, though none wished to admit it. How could a species so young and so small strike fear into empires that spanned entire galaxies? Yet the evidence was undeniable. Human colonies that should have been destroyed were still standing. Cities rebuilt faster than bombs could fall. Outposts cut off from supply lines somehow survived. Every alien expected surrender. Every empire knew the way of war. Conquer, crush, and demand obedience. But the humans did not kneel. They did not beg. They stood, and they bled, and they fought. Rumors spread from ship to ship. Soldiers spoke in quiet tones about battles they could not win. About shadows that moved in the void. About humans who used fire and steel with a fury no other race could match. Even those who died did not truly fall. Their sacrifice lit a fire in those who remained. In a council chamber of the Empire, leaders gathered. Their voices shook the walls as they argued. Some demanded total war. Others called for retreat. A general slammed his fist against the table and shouted, "They are only humans. They will break." But deep inside, everyone knew the truth. Something about these humans was different. They did not fight for conquest. They did not fight for glory. They fought for each other. They fought for survival. And survival gave them a power far greater than anyone expected. The dying soldier's words returned, again and again, like a warning carved into the stars. We should never have touched them. Soon, entire systems near Earth fell silent. Civilian ships vanished. Stations reported screams before they burned. No one knew exactly what weapon the humans had unleashed. Some said it was cunning strategy. Others claimed it was technology stolen and twisted into new shapes. A few whispered it was something deeper. A human spirit that no alien could ever understand. Across the galaxy, fear turned into silence. Silence turned into dread. Species that once laughed at the idea of humanity now locked their doors and shut their eyes. They remembered the way human eyes burned in the dark. The way human voices refused to fade. And in the center of it all was Earth. Still standing. Still burning with life. A world the galaxy once ignored. Now the very name carried weight like thunder. The story was only beginning. But one lesson had already been written in the blood of empires. To touch humanity was not a victory. It was not conquest. It was not power. It was a mistake. And in the endless silence of space, every species began to ask themselves the same question. What have we awakened? The first meeting was meant to be peaceful. At least, that was what the galaxy believed. The great empire sent a delegation to Earth, dressed in shining armor and carrying banners of conquest. They did not come as friends. They came with terms. Surrender, they said, and we will spare you. Kneel, and you will live. Refuse, and you will burn. The Council of Humans listened in silence. They showed no anger. No fear. Their voices were calm. Their eyes steady. The alien envoys mistook this for weakness. They laughed in their private chambers, mocking the species that still clung to old oceans and small cities. To them, humanity was nothing but prey dressed as people. But behind those calm human faces, there was a fire. They had heard the demands of surrender, and they had quietly decided. They would not bow. The aliens left Earth with their pride high and their arrogance unshaken. They returned to their empire boasting of how quickly the humans would fall. Yet in secret, the humans began to move. Engineers worked without rest. Scientists unlocked every piece of alien technology they could find. Soldiers trained not just to fight, but to outthink, outlast, and outmaneuver an enemy far stronger than themselves. Humanity prepared, not with the arrogance of conquerors, but with the resolve of survivors. The first clash came not in orbit of Earth, but on a small colony at the edge of the Sol system. The aliens struck fast, expecting screams and surrender. They brought ships larger than mountains. They rained fire from the skies. Cities crumbled. Fields burned. The aliens cheered, believing victory was already theirs. But when their soldiers landed, they found no chains of surrender. Instead, they found resistance. Farmers who had picked up rifles. Children carrying messages through fire. Engineers who turned broken machines into weapons. Every human they faced fought with a fury that defied reason. The aliens had fought countless battles before. They had seen armies break and worlds fall silent. But this was different. Here, even as the ground burned, humans stood taller. Even as blood fell, their voices grew louder. A single village held off an entire regiment for 3 days. A group of engineers turned mining lasers into cannons and blasted holes through armored ships. A team of medics refused to abandon their wounded, defending their field hospital until the last breath. The aliens reported back in confusion. They could not understand how such a young species resisted their might. Their commanders dismissed the warnings. They told them to crush the humans harder. Strike faster. End the war before rumors spread. But it was already too late. Rumors had wings. Stories of human defiance moved faster than light. Across the empire, soldiers began to whisper about this strange species. About their unbreakable will. About their refusal to kneel. The galaxy had expected fear. Instead, they found defiance that burned hotter than any sun. On Earth, leaders spoke quietly in their war rooms. They knew they could not outnumber the Empire. They knew they could not outgun them. But they also knew the Empire had made a mistake. By demanding surrender, they had revealed themselves as tyrants. By attacking first, they had shown their cruelty. And now, the humans would use that cruelty against them. The next battle was planned with precision. Humans struck not with brute force, but with cunning. They lured an alien fleet into a trap, hiding their small ships in the shadow of moons and asteroids. When the enemy arrived, expecting easy prey, the humans unleashed fire from every direction. Mines detonated. Ships collided. The void lit up with explosions. The aliens screamed in rage and disbelief. How could a primitive race craft such strategy? How could they know the weaknesses of ships designed by masters of war? The answer was simple. Humans learned. Humans adapted. What they saw once, they remembered. What they remembered, they improved. What they improved, they perfected. The battle ended with silence. Half the alien fleet burned in the dark. The survivors limped away, broken and scarred. For the first time, the Empire tasted fear. In the halls of power, the alien emperor demanded answers. His generals stammered and bowed, but none could explain how humans had turned weakness into strength. None could explain how every battle that should have been easy victory turned into blood and ruin. And so the whispers grew louder. The galaxy began to ask a dangerous question. What if humans were not prey at all? What if the small blue world at the edge of the Milky Way was something else entirely? The answer had already begun to reveal itself, written in fire across the stars. First contact was not peace. First contact was not surrender. First contact was the beginning of a war that would change the galaxy forever. The Empire had grown arrogant. They believed humans would fight a little, then break like every other species before them. They had centuries of victories behind them. They had fleets larger than nations. They had weapons that could turn entire cities into glass. In their eyes, humanity was nothing more than a small storm, loud but short-lived. They were wrong. Humanity had learned the truth in fire. They had studied their enemy not with fear, but with a quiet and burning focus. Every wrecked ship was pulled apart. Every captured weapon was tested, improved, and rebuilt in ways no alien mind had ever imagined. Humans saw not only the strength of the Empire but also its weakness. And humans knew how to strike. The first true strike came in the shadow of Europa, one of Jupiter's frozen moons. A massive alien warship had been sent to crush resistance in the outer colonies. Its cannons were large enough to split asteroids. Its shields glowed brighter than the sun. The Empire believed nothing could touch it. But waiting for it was not a fleet of equal size. Instead, it was a scattered collection of human ships. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, retrofitted freighters. To the Empire, they looked like toys. Harmless. Weak. When the alien captain saw them, he laughed. He opened fire with no warning, expecting to wipe them from the stars in minutes. But as his cannons lit up, something unexpected happened. The human ships vanished into the shadows of the moon. They moved with strange patterns, darting in and out of the icy craters. Suddenly, the alien warship was surrounded by silence. Its scanners failed. Its weapons misfired. Mines hidden beneath the ice exploded, shaking the giant from below. Then the human ships struck, each one carrying weapons modified from stolen alien designs. Their fire was precise, brutal, and merciless. The warship's shields failed. Its engines burned. Its crew screamed as the giant vessel, once thought unstoppable, broke apart piece by piece. In less than an hour, the pride of the Empire was nothing more than wreckage floating above a frozen moon. That was the moment the galaxy changed. News of the battle spread like wildfire. The Empire tried to silence it, but soldiers talked. Traitors whispered. Captains carried the story across the stars. For the first time, the Empire had been humiliated. For the first time, humans had not only survived, but struck first. The next strike came faster. A convoy of alien ships entered the asteroid belt, searching for hidden human bases. They never returned. Later, wreckage was found, but no bodies. Only silence, and burned metal twisted beyond recognition. Rumors claimed the humans had turned the asteroids themselves into weapons. Some even said the humans had vanished into the rocks, becoming shadows of the void. Panic began to spread among alien soldiers. They had expected easy victory. Instead, every battle became a nightmare. They spoke of humans appearing from nowhere, attacking with fury, then vanishing before reinforcements arrived. They began to call them ghosts of the stars. But the truth was simpler. Humans fought with strategy born of desperation. They did not fight for conquest. They did not fight for power. They fought for survival, and that gave them an edge sharper than any blade. On Earth, the leaders watched with grim resolve. They knew they could not win through numbers. The Empire had trillions. Humanity had billions. But numbers were not enough. Fear was stronger than numbers. And humans had begun to spread fear. The Empire sent larger fleets. Dozens of ships at once. Humanity answered not with direct force, but with cunning traps. False signals lured alien fleets into empty space, where fuel ran dry and supplies vanished. Weapons hacked into alien systems, turning their own cannons against them. One fleet reported seeing human ships on their scanners, only for those ships to vanish seconds later. The captain ordered pursuit. His ships scattered in confusion. Moments later, his entire fleet was destroyed by hidden mines and redirected asteroid fragments. Humanity had turned the void itself into their ally. The galaxy had never seen war like this. To the aliens, war was honor, numbers, and power. To humans, war was survival. And survival meant using everything. Every stone. Every shadow. Every breath. The Empire began to tremble. Soldiers questioned their orders. Admirals hesitated before sending fleets into human space. Even the Emperor grew restless in his throne. He had promised victory. Yet every day, new reports arrived of burned ships, missing soldiers, and a species that refused to die. Humanity had sent a message not in words, but in fire. You came for us. You struck first. You believed we would kneel. But now, it is our turn. This was not defense anymore. This was the first strike of humanity. And the galaxy had only begun to learn what that truly meant. The Empire had crushed countless worlds before. When they arrived, species knelt in fear. Armies broke within days. Resistance ended within weeks. That was the way of war in the galaxy. Order was built through terror, and terror always worked. But then came the humans. At first, the Empire dismissed them as nothing more than another stubborn species. But battle after battle told a different story. The humans did not fight like others. They did not collapse when cities fell. They did not surrender when fleets burned. They rose again, stronger each time, like fire fed by wind. Soon the fear began to spread. In the Empire's own barracks, soldiers whispered about the new enemy. They spoke of humans who fought with broken weapons and still won. They told stories of soldiers who should have died but stood back up, bleeding, and kept fighting until victory was theirs. Some called them demons. Others called them spirits of war. All agreed on one thing. They were not normal. In the market halls of distant star systems, traders passed the stories like coins. They spoke of fleets vanishing into silence. They spoke of human colonies that should have been destroyed but somehow still stood, rebuilt stronger than before. Mothers pulled their children close as they heard the tales. Captains locked their doors at night, afraid of shadows that were not there. Fear was no longer hidden. It was alive. One alien commander returned from a failed campaign, his body scarred and his voice broken. He told the council, "They do not fear death. They welcome it if it means victory. They do not fight as soldiers. They fight as a species that refuses to kneel." His words shook the chamber. No one wanted to believe him, but deep inside they knew it was true. The fear grew worse after the fall of the core fleet. 50 ships had entered the asteroid belt, hunting for human bases. None returned. For weeks, the Empire sent signals. No reply. At last, a single piece of wreckage drifted into open space. A blackened flag, painted with the mark of Earth. It was a warning carved in silence. From that day forward, the soldiers of the Empire began to hesitate. Fleets delayed their orders. Armies demanded reinforcements before moving. They claimed it was strategy. But in truth, it was fear. Even allies of the Empire began to doubt. Smaller species who once bowed their heads now wondered if perhaps humanity was something greater. Some whispered that humans were chosen by fate. Others whispered they were cursed. But no matter the tale, one truth remained. The humans could not be broken. On Earth, humanity saw the shift. They read it in the intercepted signals. They heard it in the shaky voices of alien prisoners. And they understood something vital. Fear itself was now their greatest weapon. They did not need to win every battle. They only needed to make the enemy doubt. They only needed to make them wonder. What if the humans were waiting in the shadows? What if every rock in space held a hidden trap? What if every soldier carried a fire that no weapon could extinguish? The Empire began to unravel from within. Admirals argued in secret chambers. Some demanded full retreat. Others screamed for absolute destruction. But every decision was poisoned by the same question. How do you fight those who do not break? and so the humans pressed harder. They struck suddenly, not for territory, but for memory. They left ruins that spoke louder than any broadcast. They carved messages into the stars, written in wreckage and flame. Every Empire's ship that burned became a story told across the galaxy. Every colony that survived became proof that humanity was unyielding. The fear was no longer just fear. It had become legend. Children in alien cities began to play games, pretending to be humans fighting endless battles. Soldiers carved human symbols onto their armor, believing it might give them courage. Entire planets began to pray, not to their gods, but to the humans themselves, hoping the storm would pass them by. The galaxy had changed. Where once humanity was ignored, now they were watched with trembling eyes. Where once they were mocked, now they were spoken of with awe. And where once they were underestimated, now they were feared. The Empire tried to control the narrative. They declared humans weak, broken, and doomed. But the stories spreading across the stars told the opposite. The Empire had power, yes. But humanity had something far greater. Humanity had become the living embodiment of defiance. The soldiers' dying words still echoed across the galaxy. We should never have touched them. Now every species understood the warning. Now every ruler lay awake at night, asking the same question. If humans could spread such fear now, while they were still young, what would happen when they grew stronger? The answer was clear, though none dared to say it aloud. The galaxy had awakened something it could not control. And fear was only the beginning. The Empire thought it understood humanity. They believed humans were reckless, emotional, and fragile. They believed humans survived only through stubborn will. But they had not yet seen humanity's greatest strength. Humans learned. Unlike any other species, humans adapted to every challenge placed before them. Every loss was not only pain, but also knowledge. Every captured weapon was not only a prize, but a lesson. Every defeat was not the end. It was training for what came next. The aliens soon discovered this truth, but by then it was too late. In the ruins of a fallen colony, human engineers gathered broken pieces of alien technology. They studied it not for years, but for weeks. In that short time, they transformed it. A plasma rifle once too heavy for human soldiers was rebuilt into a lighter, deadlier version. A captured starship engine, once thought impossible to understand, was modified to run faster, hotter, and stronger than its original design. The Empire's greatest pride became its greatest weakness. For every weapon they unleashed, humanity made a better version. For every ship they sent, humanity found a way to make it weaker. In a hidden base beneath the deserts of Mars, scientists worked day and night. They combined human creativity with alien design, building ships no one had ever seen before. Faster. Sharper. Smarter. Where the Empire relied on tradition and routine, humanity thrived on change. One battle became legendary. An alien fleet of 20 warships entered human space, confident of victory. They expected slow, outdated ships waiting for destruction. Instead, they faced vessels built from the Empire's own designs, reimagined by human hands. The battle lasted less than an hour. The alien fleet was torn apart. Survivors reported a terrifying sight. Ships they recognized, but faster. Weapons they knew, but deadlier. It was as if the Empire had been fighting against a mirror of itself, only sharper and more ruthless. The news spread across the galaxy. Humans were not only fighters. They were builders. They were inventors. They were survivors who turned the weapons of their enemies into weapons of their own. No species had ever adapted so quickly. No species had ever transformed war into art so fast. And it was not only technology. Humans adapted in spirit. They studied alien strategies, found weaknesses, and turned them against their enemies. They learned how to break codes, how to bend language, how to twist culture into advantage. They saw patterns where others saw only rules. The galaxy began to fear something deeper than human courage. They feared human imagination. In the Empire's Grand Council, leaders shouted in disbelief. One commander threw a broken piece of alien weaponry onto the table, rebuilt by human hands. "This is what they do," he said. "They take what is ours and make it stronger. They turn our pride into our shame." Another commander whispered in dread. "They do not just fight us. They become us. And then they surpass us." The Emperor himself remained silent. He had seen the reports. He had read the stories. He knew the truth. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was facing a species it could not predict. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity prepared for the next step. They were no longer only defending. They were building toward victory. Soldiers trained not just with human weapons, but with alien ones as well. Children studied alien languages in schools, learning how to understand their enemy. Farmers turned fields into hidden armories. The entire species became part of the war. Every human, young or old, became a piece of the edge that cut through the Empire. And still, humanity's greatest weapon was not revealed in guns or ships. It was revealed in spirit. For every life lost, humanity did not weaken. It grew stronger. Grief turned into determination. Pain turned into fire. Loss turned into unity. The Empire could not understand it. Other species had always fractured under pressure. But humans were different. They bent, they cracked, but they never broke. Instead, they rebuilt themselves sharper than before. Across the galaxy, rulers began to ask the same question. If humans could adapt this quickly now, what would happen when they were no longer the underdogs? What would happen when they had time to grow, to build, to master the stars? The answer was terrifying. For the first time in history, the empires of the galaxy looked at a young species and saw not weakness, but inevitability. Humanity was not just surviving the war. Humanity was becoming something greater than war itself. The whispers grew louder, carried from one system to the next. The humans learn. The humans adapt. The humans rise. And with every passing day, that edge cut deeper. The war had reached its peak. For every strike the Empire launched, humanity answered with fire. For every colony burned, a dozen new soldiers rose. The galaxy watched in disbelief as a young species stood against an empire that had ruled for thousands of years. Then came the moment that changed everything. The turning point. It began in the shadow of a dying star. The Empire sent its greatest fleet, nearly 200 warships. Each one carried weapons strong enough to destroy entire worlds. The Emperor himself declared that this battle would end humanity forever. There would be no survivors. No resistance. Only silence. But humanity did not hide. They came forward to meet the storm. Their fleet was smaller, built from stolen parts and rebuilt machines. Yet every ship carried not just weapons, but the spirit of survival. Behind every gun was a crew that refused to bow. Behind every hull was the memory of fallen worlds. The battle began with thunder. The Empire's ships fired first, filling the void with fire and light. Stars themselves seemed to tremble as explosions lit up the dark. To the galaxy, watching from afar, it looked like humanity had been swallowed whole. But then the trap was revealed. From behind the wreckage of asteroids and shattered moons, hidden human ships emerged. They had been waiting, silent and unseen. They struck with precision, targeting engines and reactors. One by one, the Empire's ships faltered. Their formation broke. Confusion spread through their ranks. The humans pressed harder. Mines detonated in perfect sequence. Alien weapons turned against their own fleets, hacked and twisted by human hands. What began as a slaughter became a rout. What began as the Empire's victory became its greatest humiliation. When the smoke cleared, only a fraction of the Empire's fleet remained. They fled in shame, leaving behind wreckage that glowed like burning stars. Humanity stood victorious. That single victory shook the galaxy to its core. For centuries, the Empire had ruled through fear. Now fear had turned against them. And at the heart of that fear stood humanity. But the turning point was not only in battle. It was in hearts. Across the galaxy, oppressed species began to rise. They had watched humanity refuse to kneel. They had seen them stand against impossible odds. Now they began to whisper, "If humans can fight, so can we." On distant worlds, rebellion sparked. Slaves picked up tools and turned them into weapons. Hidden cells of freedom fighters sent messages across the stars, calling for unity. Small uprisings grew into storms, and all of them carried the same cry. We are not alone. Humanity fights, and so shall we. The Empire tried to crush these rebellions, but the damage was already done. Soldiers who once marched without question now hesitated. Some deserted. Some even joined the rebels. The grip of the Empire began to loosen. Meanwhile, humanity reached out to these new allies. Not as conquerors, but as equals. They shared what little they had. They offered technology, strategies, and above all, hope. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy began to unite. In the ruins of a captured alien stronghold, a human commander spoke to his allies. His voice was steady, his words simple. We fight not for power. We fight for freedom. Stand with us, and together we will break the chains that bind us all. The message spread farther than any weapon. It reached worlds the Empire thought loyal. It reached fleets once thought unshakable. And slowly, the galaxy began to turn. The Emperor raged in fury. He ordered more ships, more weapons, more destruction. But deep down, he felt the truth. The war was no longer his to control. Fear no longer belonged to the Empire. It belonged to humanity. And humanity was using that fear as a blade. Every victory grew sharper. Every alliance grew stronger. What had begun as survival had now become revolution. The galaxy itself trembled, not just because humans had stood against an empire, but because they had inspired others to stand as well. The turning point had come. The galaxy was no longer ruled by fear of the Empire. It was ruled by the hope that humanity had lit across the stars. And once that fire had been set, nothing in the universe could put it out. The Empire was broken. Its fleets were scattered. Its armies were weak. Its throne, once thought unshakable, stood upon trembling ground. The Emperor, who had ruled for centuries with iron and fire, now sat in silence. His hands shook as he read the reports. Entire systems had risen against him. Worlds once loyal had joined the rebellion. And at the center of it all was the species he had once dismissed as weak. Humanity. The galaxy had changed. Everywhere, voices rose. They spoke the same words. If humans do not kneel, then neither shall we. Chains shattered. Flags burned. The Empire's name, once spoken with fear, was now spoken with hatred. The Emperor sent one last desperate order. He commanded his remaining fleets to regroup. He demanded his generals to strike one final blow. But his orders were met with silence. Many of his soldiers had deserted. Others had joined the enemy. Even his most loyal commanders no longer believed. The Empire had already fallen. And then came the moment the galaxy would never forget. Above the ruined capital of the Empire, a human fleet appeared. Not the largest. Not the strongest. But steady. Defiant. Victorious. Their ships, patched and scarred, carried the mark of Earth on their hulls. They had come not to conquer, but to end the war. A human commander broadcast a message across every channel, every frequency, every corner of the galaxy. His voice was calm. His eyes steady. Behind him stood soldiers, engineers, and civilians. Not conquerors, but survivors. He spoke clearly. We did not ask for this war. We did not seek your empire. But you came for us. You tried to break us. And in trying, you awakened something you cannot control. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not break. If you come for us again, we will end you. The words echoed across the stars. On distant worlds, rebels cheered. In hidden bases, soldiers stood taller. Entire species repeated the words like prayer. Humanity had spoken not only for themselves, but for all who had ever been crushed under the weight of tyranny. The Emperor, alone in his throne, listened in silence. He had once thought humanity a minor threat. Now he knew the truth. They were not only survivors. They were the storm. A storm that could not be stopped. And the galaxy listened. No longer was humanity seen as prey. No longer were they mocked as weak. They were remembered as the species who stood against an empire and turned fear into fire. They were remembered as the spark that lit rebellion across the stars. The war ended not with the fall of Earth, but with the fall of those who thought they could break Earth. Humanity remained. The empire did not. Years later, when stories were told around fires on alien worlds, children asked the same question. How did it begin? And the elders always answered with the same words. It began when the empire touched humanity. And humanity struck back. The lesson spread far beyond memory. To this day, ships that pass near Earth whisper the warning. To this day, rulers who dream of conquest think twice before setting their eyes on the blue world. To this day, the galaxy remembers. The message is clear. Mess with humanity, and you will not survive. Because humanity is not only strong. Humanity is not only clever. Humanity is not only defiant. Humanity is unbreakable. And in the silence of space, that truth echoes still, carried from one star to the next. A final message carved into the bones of empires and the hearts of free people. Humanity is here. Humanity will rise. Humanity will endure.